Hello everybody, my name's Graham Newell, Director of Education for Iris Connect. I'm just having a quick look at the attendee list, and it's really quite a wide and eclectic audience that we've got. People from the USA, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Armenia, Malaysia, and lots of different disciplines as well. Schools, universities, educational psychologists, trade union, health services, and local authorities. We're not going to have an opportunity to sort of introduce everybody personally, but please use the chat bar at the side, put your name and your organization in if you want to make contact with other people, but also use that chat bar in order to post questions, make comments, and at the end of the webinar, what we'll do is collect all of those comments together and post them back to the panel for their comments. Why this webinar? Well, during the last year, Iris Connect has been running a series of activities and events. They've fallen into two categories. The first category was related to Iris Connect itself, how we work, what we do, and mostly for our current customers. And the second one is more general interest. And this particular webinar falls into that more general interest. So over the last year, we've run webinars on international CPD. We've run very well regarded film clubs, which is something that evolved from our work with the Education Endowment Fund. Today's topic is mental health. Obviously, mental health has been had a growing profile over the last few years generally, but the lockdown and the coronavirus would appear to have made that even more important to address. I'm not suggesting in any way that more children are going to be going back with mental health problems, but the reality is it will have had significant impact. I know that Hugh will be going through some of the data later. We've all got different resources, emotional, physical, and financial. We've all had different experiences. So who are you going to meet on this webinar? Well, obviously, Iris Connect, we're a cloud-based system evolved out of research to enable the key interactions necessary for effective adult learning. We were the pioneers in the use of video, but it's far more than a video platform. We currently work in 40 countries and with organizations like Teach First, Chartered College, British Council. We've also got a growing presence in medical. So we're working with on training, and we're working within GP surgeries. Who else are you going to meet? Well, firstly, you're going to meet Hugh Clench. Hugh is a psychologist of many years standing. That is code for saying he's nearly as old as I am. And then we've got very lucky to have actually got two very good frontline professionals who are going to share their experiences, their work, their challenges. Melissa Royle from Queen's Park Primary, and Manaz Pimple from the Rise School. They will be giving that sort of background for us. What are the expected outcomes from this particular session? Well, we hope that it's going to be more than just awareness raising, but a large part of that is going to be up to you. The follow-up email from this webinar will actually give you access to a video recording, but it will also give you an invitation to join a group on the Iris Connect platform. If you join that group, you'll be able to share resources, you'll be able to share ideas and questions, and hopefully create a network which will give us some sort of ongoing legacy from this particular webinar session. So what I'm going to do now is pass over to you, Hugh.
Okay, thank you, Graham. I'll just share my screen with everybody. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And I'd just like to echo Graham's welcome to everybody. It's really exciting to have such a variety of professionals involved in this. And I'd just like to say hello to some of my fellow professional EPs from Liverpool. I see you've come to us mob-handed today, so that's brilliant. Anyway, I'm going to give you an overview of the current state of play at the moment in England and Wales by talking through the results of this mental health survey, which was carried out recently in the UK. Just trying to get something up for me to see. There we are. Yep. Okay, this was the first in a series of follow-up or intended follow-up reports to a survey which was first carried out in 2017, exploring the mental health and well-being of young people. And this follow-up was in July 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic. And as well as looking at the incidence of mental health issues between those two different times, they've also asked specific questions about circumstances within the current pandemic, worries and anxieties during this strange time. This is based on 3,570 children and young people who took part in the 2017 survey, and some of the information was collected from parents. You'll see here that the strengths and difficulties questionnaire was used to gather this information. No doubt some of you are familiar with the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. They are questionnaires which are completed either by the young people themselves or by parents. They have about 25 questions in them on their self-report effectively. So just to give you some examples, this is a strengths and difficulties questionnaire for young people. First question: I try to be nice to other people. I care about their feelings. You answer not true, somewhat true, or certainly true. Or I'm constantly fidgeting or squirming. Similar answers. I'm kind to younger children. I'm often accused of lying or cheating. Other children or young people pick on me or bully me, and so on. So those sorts of self-report questions. So I think it's important to note that the data is subjective, and it's probably fair to say, I think, that there's been a lot of media attention and openness about mental health and well-being in recent times. So we have to interpret these results in the light of those circumstances. Now, I'm only going to show you the main conclusions. I highlighted the key facts from the report. There's an awful lot more in the report, and I'll give you some links at the end of this so you can go and have a look if you wish. As I said earlier, I think over 9,000 children and young people in 2017. And there are lots of small differences not reaching statistical significance, but one that caught my eye was that the incidence amongst 5 to 16-year-olds of mental health issues, probable mental health issues, is 10% in London, but 20.5% in the West Midlands. Now, I don't know if we've got anybody I'm sure we have from the West Midlands, but you know, that's quite a difference, which we could speculate about. Anyway, the general conclusion is that the rates of probable mental disorders have increased since 2017. So it's probable because, as I said, this is self-report. They're not confirmed mental health disorders. And then this is one of the highlights. 1 in 6, 16% of the 5 to 16-year-old age group were identified in 2020 compared to 10.8 in 2017. So that's about a 50% increase, greater in both boys and girls. And then there's a gender difference for the older age group, 17 to 22, where about twice as many young women as young men identified. So those are some of the highlights around the incidence of probable mental health disorders. And the other thing they looked at was to look at the circumstances and experiences of people during the pandemic. And they used an instrument called the General Functioning Scale of the McMaster Family Assessment Device, amongst others, to assess this. And again, these are the highlights. That age group, 5 to 16-year-olds, twice as likely to live in a household that had fallen behind, or more than twice, with payments. And of course, we all know that, you know, there's been a tremendous financial impact of lockdown on a number of families. So that's not surprising that, you know, that's having a significant knock-on effect. And related to that, amongst 11 to 16-year-old girls, you can see about 50% more of them had witnessed an argument amongst adults in the house, no doubt related to finance. And then their experiences, sleep disorders, you can see here, 60% odd of that age group having sleep problems. Again, you'd expect this sort of thing, I guess, you know, sleep problems as a result of worries and anxieties around lockdown. And children and young people with a probable mental disorder were more likely to say that lockdown had made life worse than those unlikely to have a mental disorder. So again, quite a big difference there. And these are all statistically significant differences. So that's a snapshot at the current time. However, this last one here, many of 62.6% had regular support from their school or college, very positive. Okay, 76.4%, slightly more, who were unlikely to have a mental disorder, reported that. But nevertheless, I think it's a positive. It says something about how schools have reacted to support families and children during this period. And I wanted to focus a bit on the positive, because so much of this has been negative recently. I'm involved with a local charity. I'm in Brighton and Hove on the south coast of England, and this charity is called Amaze, and we support families of children with special educational needs and disabilities. And we've done a survey which has only just been summarised, comes up to, you know, this month, March 2021. And I trawled through we have a Facebook page, support page for parents, where they can support one another. And I noted that there were quite a few positive comments there, people saying that lockdown hasn't been a wholly negative experience for them. In fact, for some of them, it's been particularly positive, about 25%, which is surprising. So I'll say a bit more about that. We'll look at what they've identified, but this is what they said. These are the things where support is working well for them. I won't read those out. You can scan them and you'll get this afterwards. You can look at it at your leisure or go to the website, download the report. But it shows that schools generally have been doing a brilliant job, I think. And one thing which really stood out for me as a psychologist is this, how some commented on positively about access to occupational therapy and speech and language therapy during lockdown. That's one of the things that, you know, parents often complain about not having access to, or good access to. It looks like it may have improved during this period. See parents supporting one another as well. And this one here, people reflecting that their child was enjoying a more relaxed timetable and reduced pressure. I mean, some have reported that it's actually improved their relationships with their children because they spent more time with them. They've got to know them better. They've got to understand them better. They haven't had the same pressure in the morning, getting up, getting out, getting to school, the social pressures sometimes which arise. So it's not all negative by any means. However, there are some, and these are the negatives which had come out from the survey. You can see here there's a few schools falling short, clearly. Some parents struggling to motivate their children, some lacking access to therapies, so that's the reverse of what I said earlier, and a minority having nothing from school. So it's not 100%, but it's more positive, I think. Well, it's certainly in terms of the support schools have been given than negative. Now here, these are the things which families identified that they are struggling with. You'll see this was a sample of 103 parents. Each of that's 5 there, that line, 10, 15, 20. You'll be able to see it at the bottom of the slide, which I'll show you in a minute. So in effect, these are pretty well close to percentage figures. So those are some of the things of lower incidence. If we look at the bottom, I hope you can all see these items here. Anxiety amongst the parent, about 23% feeling anxious. Quite a number, 18% odd, struggling with access to food and shopping. Similar proportion feeling isolated and so on. But there's about 8-9% saying no issues, managing okay. Depression, something which you might expect, about 6%. And here we've got anxiety amongst children and young people themselves, about 5%. So those are the things families were struggling with. These are things which have really helped. Again, the high incidence things at the bottom, so quite interesting. Informal learning, doing these sorts of things has really helped people. Being kind on yourself, setting realistic goals, not being over-ambitious, and looking for the positives. You know, we don't always, I mean, some of us are glass half full, some glass half empty. Glass half full is probably a better way to look at things. Physical activity, going out, I think we all know that has a positive impact on well-being and mental health. As I said earlier, I'm in Brighton on the south coast of England, and I quite frequently go out to exercise on the promenade on the seafront, and I've never seen it so busy. It's absolutely rammed with people. Occasionally we see postcards of Victorians on Brighton seafront, and there's, you know, loads of them, and well, we're almost back to that sort of level of, I suppose that's in the days before television and media, when people used to get out and about a bit more. And the other surprising thing is the cold water swimming. I mean, it's March now, the sea is at its coldest, but I went down to the seafront yesterday, loads of people out there swimming, some of them in wetsuits, but not all of them. And, you know, we understand that really does give people, or can give people, a lift if they're depressed or anxious. So quite interesting, the things which have helped. And again, you'll be able to, if you look at the links, spend some time looking through this. We did a similar survey, I don't know if I've mentioned it already, with East Sussex. Fewer parents actually from East Sussex we got a response from, but very similar findings, and you'll be able to find that survey on the website as well. So these are the sources I've used. I know you won't be able to access them through the screen here, but we will make it possible for you to access them at the end. This is the national report, which applies to England and Wales. And then this is our Amaze. That's a direct link to the particular report from the Amaze website based in Brighton and Hove. So I hope that's set the scene and given you an idea of what's happening at the moment. I'm going to hand over now to Melissa Royle, who is the interim head of Queen's Park Primary School in London, who we've worked with online training in producing a course in wellbeing and mental health, which I will share with you later on. She's very busy. She's also the mental health lead and the Senko. So at this point, Melissa, I think, as you can see Melissa now, I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to her.
Thank you, Hugh. Hi, everyone. While I'm sharing my screen, yes, I am Melissa Royle. And like Hugh said, I am interim head of school. And if you're interested why I'm only interim, I'm just covering a maternity leave for a year. I've picked a really good year to do that. It's been a really interesting one. So yeah, Hugh asked me to come along and sort of share our experiences and how we're supporting mental health in our young people at the moment and through the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an outline of our school so you're aware. We are situated in Westminster, and everyone always thinks that's quite a posh borough, and it is in some ways, but the area that we're in is actually one of the most deprived wards in Europe. So as you can see from the data here, which I'm not going to go through all of it, we have a high number of free school meals, or families that are accessing free school meals and pupil premium, and 75% of our families are from ethnic minority groups, and obviously EAL is, you know, a really high percentage as well. And just because I'm sure that some of you might think this data doesn't add up, you'll see we've got a higher number than national average for children who have EHC plans, education healthcare plans, but actually it looks like our children that are not on the SEN register is higher than national. And the reason for that is quite simply because we do such a lot universally in school that we then don't put the children on the SEN register. So that's why that data looks like that, but there is a lot of need. We've been on quite a long journey in well-being really, and how we've supported young people with their mental health. In 2016 we decided that that would become a priority for our school, and then we ended up over, I think in 2018 we became a Centre of Excellence for Wellbeing, and from then we started to sort of branch out and really work with outreach and share our practice. Okay, so let's get on to the main area that I'm here to talk about. Now, obviously for us, we'd worked so hard to prepare or support our children with their mental health, and we had a lot of systems in place, and we really felt that we were getting great educational outcomes as well because of what we were putting into practice every day, that when we went into lockdown, I think we all sort of had this dread of how are we going to support our pupils in the same way. So one of the main things that we decided would really be a priority was making sure we kept the communication channels open, because for us with our parents, as long as we're communicating with them and we know what's happening, we can put everything in place to support them and the child, because obviously they come as a package. And we really like to think of ourselves as a community school. So yeah, it's about the family really, not just the child. So we carried out weekly phone calls home, and we spoke to the parents and the child on that day each week. And it was funny because we did wonder if it would be a bit too much, but it was the same person that called all the time, and it was a really positive experience, and we've had some great feedback, because I think really the parents needed someone to talk to as well. We also, as a senior leadership team, had a weekly Zoom meeting for parents to come to if they wished, where we would share the information, because I'm sure you all know that we got quite last minute information quite often, and things were constantly changing, and they still feel like they are in some ways, that actually it was really good to sort of share that information in person, in person as well as we could at the time, and give them an opportunity to ask us questions as well, because we definitely felt the anxiety from parents as well. And if we were unable to keep the channels open with phone calls, which are some of our more hard to reach parents, then we went round to visit the home. Obviously we didn't go in because we weren't allowed to do that, but just sort of have that chat on the doorstep, and see if there was anything else that we could really offer. And I'm going to jump to family support there because it goes together. And with that, we had a food bank. We had a food bank that's been running since this time last year. And we have an amazing wellbeing practitioner in school who has great links with businesses. So all of the businesses like McDonald's, Pret, all of the businesses that really couldn't use all their stock, we had huge deliveries of their things as well, like smoothies. So it became a bit of a community hub, our food bank. And it got quite large at one point, and managing the social distancing was a little bit of a challenge. But, you know, it was really positive, and it didn't end up just being for the parents in our school. It ended up being actually for people that live in this area as well. That has obviously continued, the weekly food bank, and we also offered shopping for supplies for those families that were isolating. We did a lot of technical support for parents, Zoom sessions, talking them through how to access remote learning, because, you know, a lot of our parents didn't have those skills previously and didn't have the resources to begin with. And we also we've been offering in all the holidays sort of enrichment activities. And again, we've got one planned for next week. So obviously that takes me a little bit into remote learning and the challenges with that. And obviously that did have its own challenges as well, because every child needed technology to be able to access the learning that we were setting up. But in the beginning, a lot of our families didn't have a laptop or a tablet that they could access it on. And as much as the government had said they were going to provide them for children who were pupil premium children, really, they only provided 60 to our school, and actually our numbers were 128 that we needed. So again, because we have a great team here, we made links and we got donations sent for those children. So I do feel like our jobs have developed throughout this whole pandemic in what we might need to do. And as for remote learning, we wanted to make sure that, yes, we want them to have access to the learning, the academic side, but again, the priority was well-being. So we had the classrooms with their teachers, but we also had a well-being Google Classroom. And that had a lot of the practices that we use in school, such as Mind Up, brain breaks, meditation. We also use zones of regulation, so setting activities for the children, which they really accessed. And with the Google Classroom, we didn't offer live streamed lessons because we've got a lot of families that have more than 3 children, and just them managing them all being on at the same time was going to be impossible. And that was sort of decided with our parents as well through those Zoom meetings. So we recorded videos, our teachers did, but every day we had a meet with the class, and that included the children in school and at home. And not in the beginning, everything wasn't there in the beginning, but we then started to bring in our one-to-one mentoring interventions with the learning support assistants. So those children that we would normally give that mentoring space to, we still offered that. And as Hugh said, some schools did provide SALT and OT interventions, and yeah, that we were one of those as well. And the families were really grateful. And as you know, I've got the Senko hat on as well, so it was really important to me that that happened. Some of our children couldn't access online learning, and it didn't matter what we put in place. So we just made sure we delivered packs of resources for them, and that they would have what they needed to feel like they were succeeding as best as they can. Now, obviously, I put it in a red box at the bottom here, but we did invite children into school if we felt that the child or the family needed more than we could offer remotely. And this last lockdown, we started with 25 children, and by the time it had come to us opening on the 8th of March for all the pupils, that had turned into 75 children. And there were a lot of conversations between myself and other senior leaders here and our wellbeing practitioner that has really great relationships with families as well, in regards to the reasons for that. was it a parent that was struggling with their mental health, or was it the child who was really displaying behaviours that they needed support with? And it was something that needed to really be considered carefully, because of course we have to consider the well-being and mental health of our staff team as well. So nothing was ever put upon staff. It was that real balancing act of getting it right for both of those groups. We asked parents what we were doing well, and these are just a few of the comments. But what I was really pleased about was actually what we wanted it to be about well-being and making sure that everyone at home felt in good mental health, that actually the parents had got that and they did feel cared for. And that was really important to us. And of course, we have pupils in school. So I think it's important to mention those. We offered them the same learning experiences, but they were enhanced because they had the teacher with them. They were in smaller groups, which they really enjoyed. They got an opportunity to play with friends. They obviously had greater access to one-to-one mentoring as well. And they had the ability to maintain schedules and routines to aid transition back into the whole school education. But after when I got their pupil voice really about being in lockdown, although they really liked the small groups and they liked having more teacher attention, and they actually, a lot of them really did thrive in that environment, all of them talked about missing their friends. So that was a really prominent thing for them. So when we found out all the pupils were coming back on the 8th of March, we were all jumping for joy, but we knew it wouldn't be easy. So the first thing that we did was we sat down and we planned a recovery curriculum, and we got every sort of subject area lead involved in that, but we made sure that mental health and well-being was the driver of it all. We really see this period from the 8th of March until the end of this year about rebuilding those relationships and, I suppose, teaching the children to get back into that learning zone. So we haven't really focused on catch up as such at the moment, but we have obviously considered what is most important for them right now. We then arranged enrichment activities for each year group, and in particular, giving them something that they wouldn't normally do. So giving them boxing, for example, for year 6, that outlet where they can start working as a team, and the other sort of sport activities. We've got a Chelsea football club who are coming in and doing an activity with one of our other year groups. So giving them different experiences, because we also know they've missed all the enrichment activities that we would normally provide for the children. And the other thing that we made sure is making sure that the children and the parents were well informed. They always knew what was happening. When I agreed to do this, I said, I'm going to talk about what we're aiming for in the future. And then since then, we've had the children return. And I realized, actually, I can't look too far ahead with this. We are really thinking now, from what we've observed, is what the children need to now do is transition from that online identity, which they had and they were involved in for those 3 months, really, and the communication they used, and really transition that into real life peer experiences, peer relationships and experiences. I've put these two in really big boxes here, but it's very obvious and prominent across the school, but mostly with the older pupils, so Key Stage 2 pupils, that there is a real increase in anxiety in a lot of our pupils, and they are really struggling to have positive relationships at the moment. And it's because their identity online and the way they talk to each other online is very different to how they can be in school. So just to give you a little bit of information about how we're tackling this, I suppose. I think this, and it was interesting, Hugh, that this matches up with the data, with the anxiety, with the parents and the child, because obviously if the parents have anxiety, that does also lead into the children as well. So we have made sure that we've shown the children and the parents how we are going to help them to catch up moving forward, so that it's really transparent to them, because some of the anxiety is about how are they ever going to catch up and be where they need to be. So we've really been open with the children and the parents about that. We've planned really exploring anxiety through stories, so it's not directed at them, but they can really explore it through characters. We've now started our one-to-one or small group interventions again, which has been really positive so far, but it's still early days. So, and with the difficulties with relationships, what we've created is the children are needing a lot of support at the moment to navigate those relationships, particularly when it comes to playtimes. When they're in class, it's much more controlled, but when they're given that freedom, they are really struggling. So we've sort of got a key adult system at the moment where the same adult deals with certain children all the time, so things don't get lost between adults. Because as much as we have a really good online, well, we use CPOMs to record everything so all the relevant teachers know, it's quite time consuming. And actually, if you can keep the same person involved with that child and that family, so I talk about families, it's not just the child, it's the family, then it sort of saves a lot of time. And the thing that we are really having to tackle, and we did do this when the children were at home remote learning as well, but the social media side of things, and that has become a really negative, the tool that they're using, and it's being used really negatively. So we are in talks with parents about that, but we are going to offer some online education next week to our parents again. You know, we have done it before, but just reminding them that they have the control, and actually some of the things that the children are seeing and doing is having a really negative effect on them. So it's not really looking really far in the future, but these are what we are trying to work on right now. Our aim in the future would be to get all the children back to where they were before this happened. But as we know, we don't really know what's going to happen next in this pandemic. Are we going to stay now in school? I hope so. But you know, it's a process, and it's something that we are slowly working through. So I think that's about it for me, but I hope that has been helpful, and there's some things that you can really relate to, or maybe some ideas that you could take to your own settings if you are in that situation. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I'm Vesna from Iris Connect, and it's my pleasure now to introduce you to our next speaker, which is Manaz Pimple. She's a well-being lead at the Royle School, which is a school registered for pupils with autism, ages 4 to 18 years. And Manaz will share the insight into the school's well-being strategy and vision, and how those strategies have actually helped them to support not just the pupils, but the staff and also the wider community. So thank you very much for being with us, Manaz, and over to you now.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. There we are. Okay, good evening. I hope you all are well. I am the Wellbeing Lead at the Royle School, and I'm going to be sharing some of our strategies that were implemented at the Royle since 2016, so since five years back. And the reason why we introduced these wellbeing tools is not because we were anticipating a pandemic, but the context of our school demanded that we provide practical tools for our pupils, because we know that they're more prone to having anxieties and mental health problems and challenges. So now what you see here in front of you is, I'm sure most of you guys know, it's a well-being scale. It's like a continuum in which you can plot where your well-being is. And it depends on people's life experiences, but also on their mental capital. So if you imagine, if you see those bars that are on top, they could be your network bars or your showing you how much battery life you have. So imagine those bars as your mental health capital. And what we did is, by using these well-being tools, which are from applied positive psychology, we provided our pupils and ourselves with a bonus bar. So, I mean, you can see that if I'm in crisis, with this bonus bar, I move to struggling. And then from struggling, an extra bar moves to surviving. So these tools helped us to just top up or keep up with the mental capital that we would need. And this was a vision that was created back in 2016 for the school, which said the Rice School will be a school where all members of its community feel valued and flourish. And by community, we meant parents, pupils, and staff all together. And then we came up with this whole thing about, making like an image that we can remember, like an acronym that we can remember. So we came with this great well-being values, GREAT. And we started plotting all our tools around this rays, these great rays. So G stands for gratitude, R stood for relate, to relate with kindness, spread kindness around us. E for energize, that's to do with the body, the physical health. A was for awareness, mindfulness. We place a lot of emphasis on mindfulness, to pause, to breathe, to reflect on positive moments of the day. And then the T was to keep trying something new, to keep doing something new, because we know that helps with the neuroplasticity of the brain. I'm very quickly going to take you through each of these rays, starting with gratitude. So we all know that gratitude practicing is good for us, but we just did not leave it at that. We just did not say, oh, gratitude practicing is good and everybody has to practice gratitude. What we did is we broke it down into bite-sized, achievable chunks for our pupils. So we introduced something called Gratitude Fridays. So every Friday during the morning registration time, all classes have to engage in writing a gratitude note. And what happens is we have a theme for every week. So we would have, for example, we had a World Book Day theme where they had to express their gratitude towards their favorite author. Then if there's Science Week, it's for a scientist or their science teacher. And then also you can see some more. So support staff at school, a family member, your favorite teacher, a friend. So every week there is a theme. And on every Friday is when every class in morning registration practices gratitude. Because we know that with any kind of well-being tool, it has to be a regular, sustained practice. And the pupils started enjoying doing it. So initially there was a bit of resistance, but again, with practice and perseverance, everybody now engages in gratitude every week. And these are just some of the pictures I want to share with you guys of our pupils practicing gratitude. Some of them going over and handing those gratitude notes. And also the why was always discussed. So why is gratitude good for you? The scientific evidence behind it was always spoken to the pupils. And we also have something called gratitude walls in every class. So every class has the freedom to decorate their own gratitude walls. As you can see, some of them have done a gratitude tree. The other one is an image of the movie Up. And then there are these little gratitude post-its that they will put on a Friday when they express their gratitude. So it's just a nice visual representation, and it's a continuous sustained practice to practice gratitude. Then when we move on to kindness. So at the Rise, we have kindness trees. So you can see what happens is at the start of a year, a tree decal, a sticker is put up on the wall, which doesn't have any leaves on it. So on the top, you can see the one with no leaves on it. But then as the year progresses, what happens is each class has to earn gratitude points. So they have these kindness tables where teachers will notice acts of kindness. Could be simple acts, keeping the door open for a teacher to walk in, carrying books for them. So all of these kindness gets into points. And then depending on the points, the classes get certain leaves to put up on this kindness trees. So you can see as the year progresses, there are some leaves that have come up, and then some more come up. And as the year ends, the tree gets filled up with different kindness leaves. So every class has a different leaf color. And again, it's a nice representation of an act, which we know, again, kindness is very good for our well-being. It also creates a bit of a healthy competition between classes, and it motivates pupils to keep on practicing kindness. Then we had the E, the GRE. E was for exercising, making sure we look after our shed, which is sleep, hydration, exercise, and diet. And again, at the Rise, what we do is every class has a 45-minute yoga lesson every week. We introduce, so we know pupils are too busy playing, they don't have time to maybe come in and eat fruit. So what we did is we offered them something called a fruit trolley. So every morning break time, and the kids would be busy playing either pool or they were out playing football, a fruit trolley with different fruits would go to them, and they would have the option of picking something they like to eat, but it was always healthy. So there were like carrots, there were different types of fruits there. We have an in-house gym. So the kids are in their PE lessons or just throughout the day, when we find that they're getting a little bit challenging, they have the option of going in the gym and just exercising. So that's how we looked after our E. And then A, that is awareness. So a lot of emphasis is placed on mindfulness. So we do talk about the whys, we do talk about the scientific evidence behind how mindfulness helps us. But again, we made it very, very achievable and very practical. So what we did is in every morning, every day, every morning, we practice 5 minutes of mindfulness during the morning registration, and we call them the 5 MMMs, 5-minute morning mindfulness. And all class teachers had resources that they could just click and play, and everybody, including teachers and staff, had to have to engage in that morning 5 MMMs. And then during the day, if you walk around in our school, you'll find we have these flowers, like image of flowers placed, just dotted around randomly in the corridors. And whenever you see them, you have to just pause, take a deep breath, and then you can just carry on walking. So it just helps you spontaneously to bring your awareness in the present. So over there, you can see that was a marigold that I had put, but the flowers change positions, and they change color also, so that it doesn't become a blind spot. So again, we offer this very practical tip for them to practice mindfulness. And then as part of awareness, what we also do is something called, we practice our rainbow moments, or you could call them their what went wells at the end of the day. And that's like you discuss 3 highlights of your day. And just to explain to you why is mindfulness important is because it's not, many times, it's not that our pupils are unavailable to learn, unable to learn, sorry, but it's they're unavailable to learn. Their minds are so occupied, as you can see an image there. I've used it to traffic image of a typical mind of a youngster, and you can see how much is going on in their mind, and especially now with the pandemic, this is too much happening. So what happens is with mindfulness, you're just making the mind available to learn. You're creating those pauses, they're recalibrating their attention, they're more ready and able to learn. And the idea of the rainbow moments was that we know that our minds are so used to negative thinking. We love rumination. We love, so, these pupils, if they have one particular incident, will be like, oh, I had a horrible day and I had a terrible day and things like that. So what we do is by practicing your rainbow moments, you're bringing the positive elements in the foreground of the pupil's mind. You're making them realize, well, it was not entirely a bad day. You had moments of positive moments in your day. So this exercise, again, is very important to help the brain focus on the positives rather than the negatives. And then the same was with our staff. So for our staff, we do encourage a lot of engaging in a lot of well-being activities. We do have CPDs that are just dedicated for well-being, because we believe, you all must have seen this, we believe that we need to put our oxygen mask first before we help others. Again, for our staff, we could easily jot it down across these rays. So we have our own staff kindness tree. And on Mondays, our head teacher reads out kindness notes that we put in a little box. And then the person who the note is for gets to put up a kindness leaf on the tree. We had something called the secret buddy scheme, where we have buddies and we don't know who our buddy is, but we'll make sure that for that term, we look after our buddy's well-being. We might give them little gifts or little books to read and things like that. Again, we use our gym. We have a lot of football activities. The mindfulness flower is something we also use as staff. So wherever we see one, we'll just stop, pause, breathe, and continue. We have yoga sessions. And on a Friday, we finish our work by 3:15. And then from 3:15 to 4, we do engage in different well-being activities. So like, for example, we'll do cooking, knitting, some dance classes. And we also have a well-being planner. If somebody wants to use a planner and just make sure that, you know, they are doing something across the great rays, then we have this planner that we use. And ultimately, I think the pandemic was the ultimate test to make sure for us to see that our tools actually worked. And it was like very interesting. I used to have these chats with my head teacher, and I was like, how do we know that our tools work? Because doing a survey with our pupils is not very straightforward. You know, they're not very, like, with their PDAs and things like that, they're not very cooperative in actually answering the survey. And she made a very valid point, and she said, our pupils will not tell us, they show us, they will show us. And that was quite true, because come the pandemic, I mean, we had all these strategies that we kept on doing, even through the VL, even through live lessons. Mornings always started with mindfulness. Friday was always a gratitude. Kindness leaves are always announced in the assembly. And what we saw is, after the first lockdown, when we did a phased return, our pupils were in absolutely good shape. They were eager, they came back quickly, they settled down, they were eager to learn. I mean, even in the third lockdown, we had the option of doing a phased return, but we didn't have to use it. We didn't see any fragility in our pupils. And like, the ultimate test was, our pupils all sat their spring assessments. The second week they were back in school. So they actually showed us that their well-being was fine, was absolutely amazing. And this is just, again, some data. So when we did a staff survey about how the staff felt that leadership supported their well-being, and we had 100% staff who said either strongly agree or agree. And these were just emails from parents that we received about how well supported they felt. That the kids were tremendously well cared for and supported, and they also felt much more reassured. And this is a beautiful email about a pupil whose dad was very critical and was on a ventilator. And you can see that, you know, it says that there's this line that says, you know, seeing Manaz's assembly gave him a lot of information about how to look after his mental health, and that he's missing school. And his mom said that he was actually a rock for her during this difficult time. So our pupils did show us that our tools work. And the ultimate icing on the cake was, a week after they were back, I did this debate in our well-being lesson with our pupils, where I was very open and I said, do you guys think you're the lost generation or you're the golden generation? And when we had this debate, it was very interesting to see how resilient they were. And they just felt that, you know, yes, we do accept that there were losses, we do acknowledge that, but we think we are strong enough and we are resilient enough to just bounce back, and we'll carry on. So I'm going to leave it at this slide for you guys to just have a read. And yeah, just see that these tools work. I mean, if they're broken down, if they are done in routine and in a continuous way, they do work and they do make a difference. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manaz. That is really inspiring to see how these tools and strategies have really shown that they can work, and hopefully it gives inspiration for the attendees to take something away. So it's been great to hear both from yourself and the other speakers. We would like to have a few minutes available now for questions and answers from the attendees. And I would like to encourage anyone to either use the chat to post a question, or if you would rather speak, if you would like to raise your hand, and we will allow you to unmute yourself. And I would like to invite the speakers to join me on the virtual stage in order to be ready to answer the questions. So we've had a couple of questions more on the practical side in terms of making the slides available, and yes, they will be sent to everybody. And like Graham said at the start, there will also be a possibility to collaborate in a collaboration group, safe group on the Iris Connect platform, where the actual discussion can be continued asynchronously.
I've got a question for Melissa, if I'm allowed to put one as a panelist.
Yes, of course you are.
I was just interested, Melissa, you said that there's a different people, some of your pupils are struggling with their different identities from when they were online and when they're actually back in school face to face. I just wonder, was that in a negative direction or a positive direction? I mean, was some
in a negative direction?
Okay, was some sort of better adjusted to being online, if you like, and you know,
there were definite positives of the children going online for all that time, but and I feel that our children definitely improved their IT skills. They've come back very good on the laptop and how they use Google Classroom, and we've gone ahead in that way. But in regards to their relationships online, I think they had a lot of time where they were left to be online on their own. So as much as they would be doing their learning, they were also in social media groups. And yeah, we've seen quite a lot of negative talk towards one another.
Yeah.
And it's coming back into school and knowing, of course we don't want them to talk like that online either, but they've sort of tried to continue that in person to person. So yes, it's been quite a negative thing, really.
Right. Okay. I see there are some questions for you in the chat.
Thank you. Yes, we do have a couple of questions. I think there is one particularly from Melissa, and the other one can be answered by all the panelists. So if you don't mind, I will go for the one specifically from Melissa, which is, what sort of social distancing did you have to follow with the children when they were back at school?
Do they mean from the 8th of March? Is that when we're talking about? Because it was different after the first lockdown to the second. But if we're talking from the 8th of March, we are sticking to our bubbles like we were previously. But our bubbles do consist of 2-year groups. So years 1 and 2 together. But we do have here, that would be 4 classes, but we have small class sizes here, which is a choice that we've made. And yeah, so it's about 90 children per bubble.
Thank you,
and
Melissa.
in regards to the social distancing with the older children, we still stick with the 1.5 meters, them being mindful of being 1.5 meters away from each other. But yes, they do stay in their bubbles, and they all have different play times, so there's no crossover of bubbles either.
Thank you. The other question is around the planned recovery curriculum for this year, what you have mentioned. So the question is, can the panel share your thoughts around what catch-up learning should look like? And should it be more of a well-being focus rather than the curriculum?
Oh, well, personally, if you're asking me, I think that's the approach we've taken in school, because that has been the priority of our school's vision anyway, since 2016. So we really believe that if children are not in the right place to, if their mental well-being is not in the right place to learn, they won't learn well. So like I said, this from the 8th of March till the end of this year, of course they will do academic things, but the priority is their well-being and how we bring that back. I mean, we do a lot of practices in school of self-regulation, protective behaviors. I don't know if you know much about those, but you know, the children use the language to keep themselves safe, and they also use the language well to talk about their emotions. So we are really trying to focus on bringing that back and building those relationships. Because it is a bit like restarting it again. You know, obviously they have done it before, but they're really out of practice now.
Understood. Thank you. Would anyone of the other panelists like to add anything to that regarding the curriculum?
Hi, can I add something? I absolutely agree with Melissa. What our approach is, we're doing a simultaneous approach. So like all our TAs and our teachers are very good with rapport building, and we do give them a lot of space, and we do ask our pupils to take breaks when the need arises. But it's more of it's happening together. So we are, the catch-up is happening, but we never speak the catch-up language. So we will never ever tell the pupil that, oh, you're behind and you didn't engage in your VLE lessons. So never ever, the language is never spoken in that way. But yeah, so it's like simultaneous is what we are doing, you know, making sure that this is regular and sustained in terms of its well-being, but at the same time, trying to get our pupils back into the routine of learning.
Thank you.
I think Maria's posed a really interesting question at the end there, that we've seen a steady increase in children are suffering from anxiety, particularly in the transition back to school. Any tips on how to support these children at school and to get them to self-manage their anxiety? I'm wondering, have you got any very specific tips that you could use? I mean, I take it, what I've taken from Manaz's talk is actually, it's not tips, it's actually deep-rooted philosophy within the school, which I think is a very different thing. But are there any things that schools can actually provide as short-term measures before they start adopting this whole principle of pupil mental health well-being at a deeper level?
Can I answer that one, Graham? Is that right? I think for us, it's really helping them to understand that anxiety to begin with. You know, what is that feeling that they're feeling, and where is it coming from? So, like I said, using key quality texts that really is about a child, or, you know, it could be an animal as well, depending on the age group of the children that are studying it, which really explores anxiety, so they get that outside view of it, and then they can begin to relate it to themselves. Because I think you can get so much understanding, particularly with lots of our pupils here at EAL, so having the pictures as well to support them, to really understand what that anxiety is and relate to it, because they might have never felt it before, and it might be a new thing for them. So that's how we would definitely start, if that helps.
I was wondering if there are any resources that might be available, actually that's coming down, managing anxiety, that you can identify. The schools who have not gone through the same process that you've both gone through might be able to turn to support pupils and young people.
There's lots
or staff.
I was going to say staff as well. There are lots of books that I can definitely recommend, and maybe it's something that's worth me putting into the chat so they have them written down. But yeah, there's sort of the Anxiety Gremlin. If you you can sort of work through that with a child and help them to see it. But I mean, like I said, storybooks that focus on it is, I think, a great place to start, helping them to identify it from the outside. But I've got a huge long list, so I'm not going to reel them all off, but I'm happy to share them because I think it's really useful.
That would be great, Melissa. And of course, don't forget that you can continue to do that, and you can add them to the group that we are going to make available for everyone who is interested to share additional resources that would be useful for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So conscious of the time, at this point, I would like to now invite Hugh back to share with us the overview of the school's responsibilities, which is becoming also a very important topic at the moment.
Thanks, Vesna. Hopefully you can now see my screen. I hope I've shared it successfully. So very briefly about the responsibilities that schools have. Many of you probably know this already, but we've had in the UK, applying to England and Wales in particular, a whole series of reports recently focusing on mental health and well-being. You can see them all here. Relationships and sex education, health education. Something here on social media, we've heard about that, haven't we, just now, about some of the pressures from social media. That was in 2017. They're quite old, these, actually. 2019, the most recent one. Children's Voices from the Children's Commissioner, and this one, which is the Green Paper, the Government Green Paper 2017, which placed this responsibility on schools. And Melissa, you're already there, clearly, but not everybody is. And they've given a tremendous lead-in time there. From 2017, so by 2025, every school should have a designated lead in mental health. And that should be a trained member of staff who's had some specialist training. Those are the things below which the designated lead needs to do. Obviously, to advise staff, help staff to identify pupils, oversee the help schools are given, and also to refer to specialist services if necessary. I mean, specialist services, they are out there, but you know, they're fairly limited. And I know from my experience as an educational psychologist, it often take a long time to respond. So, and a lot of things can probably be dealt with in school, apart from the more severe issues. Anyway, online training, we have a whole portfolio of courses in special educational needs and disability, which are all blended learning courses, which means it's a blend of online material and tutor time, which before COVID was face-to-face, but now is through media such as this, Zoom. And about 18 months ago, we worked with Queen's Park Primary to add a course on well-being and mental health for pupils. Now that is out, that's available, and we're going to offer free tutor training to all registrants on this webinar today. If you're in a position where you can support staff, deliver to staff, or if you're if you have a patch of schools, such as an educational psychologist, schools that you work with, you can deliver it to those. We do know that courses need to be tutored by somebody giving support to a school or within the school generally to be effective. Online training, which people do individually on their own without support, we know isn't particularly effective. Effects wash out fairly quickly. So we're offering people training in that if they wish to take it up. And Iris Connect, as Vesna's already mentioned, and Graham will be offering access to a collaborative group where this conversation can continue. If you want to sign up for free tutor training, here's a link. I noticed that Vesna had put the links to those reports in the chat, which are live links, but you'll also get this as a follow-up anyway. So that's where you can register if you wish to. These icons here simply are outlines of the content of the course. There's an introduction about what is well-being, mental health, how do we define it, different models of well-being and mental health. Then there's a whole section on specific aspects of mental health, such as anxiety, depression, various other disorders, a whole range. But then this is for schools, the crux of it really, is the support which schools can provide. And Melissa, I know that you have this sort of structure, a tiered structure, 3 levels, the sort of thing all class teachers should be doing, a bit more specialist input from people such as Melissa, and then the tier 3 support where you may go outside the school. So all of that is there with case studies to illustrate some of the issues which might arise. So we hope a lot of you will be able to make use of that. At this point, I'm going to hand back to Graham to wrap things up and to close. But thank you all for attending. It's really brilliant that you've come here today and found the time to do this. And I hope you've got lots of ideas for the future.
Thank you, Hugh. I really just starting off by saying, or ending by saying thank you to people for attending, but also thank you to the panelists. I hope people will consider Hugh's generous offer very seriously. I think it could be great value. Melissa and Manaz, I think you're quite inspiring. I've been ahead. I've been a teacher. I've been ahead of special and mainstream schools. I never was prepared in my roles to do those jobs, to tackle the issues that you are currently tackling. And I never prepared heads to do so either. You know, it's been a bit like, I think for you, sort of putting the wings on the aircraft whilst you're flying it. It's been quite inspiring listening to. A couple of things I've taken away from this. It was a comment, I think it was Manaz's comments, that we make our minds available to learning. And when I hear so often, oh no, we're about teaching, we're about the curriculum, I think that is a key issue that people miss. The pupils have got to be able to learn. They've got to have the space inside their heads to do so. And also from both of you, that whole concept that good practice is not responding to an emergency. Good practice is all the things that you've actually embedded within your schools as practice, which is all the way through. So thank you I do have an apology to make, Vesna. I didn't introduce Vesna at the very beginning of this webinar, and she just popped up on the screen. And so thank you, Vesna. Vesna is our director of market development, but she's had a long experience working in Europe for us on a number of projects, including some Erasmus Plus projects, at which point I'll just stare into the distance and spit. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and take care and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you all.